Hey lovely people, today we're going to be making my Boho Sun chandelier earrings in this tutorial, and this is part 1. So first you're going to need 10 pieces of 2mm copper beads, and I got these from Rio Grande Jewelry Supply. You're also going to need 6 pieces of 2.5mm beads and 2 pieces of 4mm beads. I got these on Etsy and they're called gemstone crystal beads. You're also going to need a pair of earring hooks and 6 pieces of matchstick size crystals. I also just searched that on Etsy and I had to sort through about a half a pound of crystals and picked out the best ones, and these are them. So I'll be picking 6 of these out. And here are the wire gauges that you're going to need. Feel free to go ahead and pause the video once they finish loading and gather them up. You're also going to need some chain and earring hooks like I mentioned before. So the tools that you're going to need are going to be some flesh cutters, and these are from Lindstrom. I also have their round nose pliers, and I absolutely love these. I'm also going to be using some tweezer nose pliers with some nice fine tips, and some nylon pliers, the brand doesn't really matter, and some bail making pliers if you don't have the round nose. I also really highly suggest that you have a pair of flesh cutters that you don't care about. As you can see, the tips are super chewed up. When we cut the thicker gauge wire, that just happens, and I don't want to use my nice ones and mess them up. You're also going to need a ruler. So once you have all your supplies, let's get started. So first, we're going to take our 16 gauge wire, and I'm going to cut myself 8 inches of it using my flesh cutters that I really don't care about. Again, this wire will really chew up your tips, so do not use your good ones. So I cut 2 pieces of 18 gauge round with those pliers, and right here I'm just going to cut off the tips and make sure that it's not pokey at the end. And I'm going to use my round nose pliers, and I'm going to start making a loop. You really want to make sure that with your left hand that you're really holding the wire tight, because it is quite hard to go ahead and form a round. And you can also use your bail making pliers here if you don't have your tweezer nose. So I'm just continuing to hold the wire in my left hand nice and tight, and I'm using my right with my wrist to just make a nice loop. So I'm adjusting and just continuing to use my pliers to make that nice round loop. So I adjusted it some more, and I'm just continuing using kind of like my finger skin in order to make the nice round spiral that we're going for. So you're just going to continue using your tweezer nose pliers and just making the spiral until you get to something that looks like this. And I'm just going to adjust it a tiny bit more because I want a little bit more of a curve. So that looks pretty good. And now you're going to want to make the second one that looks almost exactly like it. You can adjust like I'm doing here. I'm matching them up, seeing what needs to be tweaked, and taking my tweezer nose pliers and just adjusting it as needed. So I'm just going to finish adjusting this and pulling this wire out to make sure that they look pretty even, pretty symmetrical. And in this design, we're going to have these be mirrored. So you can check to make sure they're exactly alike and then flip them like I do here for right and left. So once we do that, we can set these off to the side, and we're going to make the sun rays. So for the weaving base, you're going to want to cut yourself 4 pieces at 4.5 inches of 18 gauge round and 1 piece 4.5 inches of 16 gauge round. And the reason we want to do the bottom one 16 gauge round is because we want it to match up with our earrings. Once we slip the weave off of this base, we're going to slip it onto our earrings, and when we have it the same size, it's going to go on nice and easy. So once we have our base wires cut, we're going to go ahead and cut our weaving wire. So we're going to use 22 gauge round and cut 2 pieces at 15 inches and set one off to the side. So here I'm taking my base wire, which is the 16 gauge, and my weaving wire, the 22 gauge round, and I'm leaving a 1-inch tail. Now I'm going to hold it nice and firm between my index and my thumb, and I'm going to make 5 wraps around it. So here I have 2 wraps, and here I have 3. And you're just going to want to make sure to hold that super tight as you're wrapping the wire around the bottom base wire. Once you've finished all 5 wraps, then you're going to want to go ahead and add the 2 18 gauge base wires right on top of the 16 gauge. so it just goes right on top of the weave that we just did. And you want the tail still behind. So I'm just adjusting these, letting you see here, and we're going to wrap around the whole thing one time. So around all 3 wires, we're going to wrap around. You can see here from the side, and we're going to get our nylon pliers and gently squeeze that down. That way we have a nice uniform tight look at the end. So once you have done that, we're going to go ahead and open up the bottom wire and the 2 top wires. You're going to make sure that you have a space between the bottom and the second wire. So I'm going to weave around the bottom wire once. So I'm trying to get my weave through there, and I'm just going to weave one time on the bottom base wire. So here I'm going to adjust the wires so that they're sitting nice and close together. Sometimes this is a little fidgety because it is the first wraparound, the first little sequence, and I'm just going to continue adjusting until everything is nice and tight next to each other. You want to make sure that you're not marring up your wires, so be very gentle when you do this process. And now we're going to put our weaving wire up, and we're going to add the other 2 18 gauge base wires. So again, we're going to add these right on top of the 3 that we just weaved around. And here I'm showing that it is going between the 2 wires. That way it's kind of held. And I'm going to take our weaving wire and I'm going to wrap it around all 5 wires now, and make sure that you're holding it nice and tight but not pulling it too tight because you don't want the wires to go on top of each other. So we're going to grab our nylon pliers and we're just going to gently flatten it down. Again, once you do a weave every single time, except for around the bottom, you're going to want to use the nylon pliers for a nice look. So again, I'm going to weave around the bottom wire once, and I'm pushing that all the way towards the other weave. That way it's nice and tight. And you can adjust as you feel fit with your tweezer nose pliers. That way you have a super nice crispy look at the end. So now we're going to weave again in between the 3 wires at the bottom and the 2 wires at the top. And I'm sticking my weave in through there, going around the back and bringing it down, using my nylon pliers and flattening it out, and then going up and weaving between the first and the second wire, once around that bottom wire. Once you do that, we're going to go up again, and we're going to go around all 5 wires this time. So once you have it wrapped around all 5, you're going to take your nylon pliers and flatten that out. So the next part of the weave is going on the bottom wire again. And we're just doing once around the bottom wire. And then up, and we're going to go between the 2 top wires and the 3 bottom wires. And we're just holding it nice and firm between our left hand and using our pliers to go ahead and flatten that out. And straightening your weaving wire really helps the sun to just have a nice look as well. So we're going to take the wire, go around the base wire again once, go up, and we're going to go over all 5 base wires. So you can see the pattern that's forming here. And I'm adjusting it, that way it's nice and close. So once we go ahead and wrap that around, then we're going to take our nylon pliers and we're going to flatten it out again. And I almost did forget here. So I like to pull down the bottom wire, sometimes the base wire, so it's easier to wrap the one time around it. And I'm closing it back up. So this is what our weave's looking like. And we're going to go up in between the top 2 and the bottom 3 wires, wrap it around, get our nylon pliers and flatten that out. And adjusting it, and then now we're going to go around the bottom wire once and just making sure that everything is looking nice and tight, straightening out my weaving wire because it does really help the design and it helps you when you're weaving. And then I'm just showing you here that we want 5 long rays, and right now we have 3. So we're going to continue this pattern until we get those 5 long rays. So here's the 4th long ray, and we went around all 5 wires once. And we're going to flatten that out with our nylon pliers again, going around the bottom weaving wire once, closing that back up, going up and through the top 2 and the bottom 3 wires. So once we wrap that around those bottom 3 wires, this is what it looks like. And then we're going to go ahead and use our nylon pliers again and flatten that weave out. So we're going to go around the bottom base wire once, straightening out our weaving wire. We're going to go up and over all 5 base wires again, using our nylon pliers to flatten that out. Now I'm just adjusting here, making sure everything's all nice and tight. We have our 5 larger rays now that we want. So I'm just letting you guys see here what it looks like. I'm going to straighten out my weaving wire, and I'm going to wrap around the bottom once. Now we want to go ahead and make the left look like the right so that we have a nice symmetrical design. So we need to go ahead and wrap what it looks like on the left on the right now. So we're going to do the little wraps exactly the same. So we're going to take the weave, go up, and go between the top 2 wires and the bottom 3 wires. So here I'm taking it around, going to take my nylon pliers, and I'm going to flatten that weave out. And now that we have what looks like the left, we're going to go ahead and do the 5 wraps just like we have on the left hand side on the right hand side. So here I'm wrapping it around the 5 times. Here's 3 times, making sure it's nice and tight and close together. And here's 4. And using my tweezer nose pliers just to push it all together because I want it nice and tight. And here is the 5th wrap. You can see that there's a little bit of a gap, so I'm going to take my tweezer nose pliers again and just shimmy that down. So here is our finished weave, and you don't necessarily need the entire 15 inches that we cut of the weaving wire, but you do want something to hold on to, so I find it necessary. I mean, if you wanted to wrap with a little bit shorter, you could, but it's going to be a little bit more difficult, so I'd rather have more excess than not. We're going to take our flush cutters and we're just going to go ahead and snip the ends at the bottom. I'm showing you here where I'm snipping, and we want to snip kind of where the wire would land in the center of the weave. So I'm using my tweezer nose pliers just to go ahead and push that down. And I'm going in the way that we would have wrapped the weave to make sure nothing is sticking out. So I'm going to do that to the other side as well. First, I'm going to adjust, and then I'm going to take my flush cutters again, and I'm going to cut right here, kind of towards the middle of the weave at the bottom. So you can see where I'm cutting, and I'm just trying to show you as best as I can where it exactly is, because it's kind of hard to explain. But you want to make sure that it is where the weaving wire is not seen from the front, but it's not poking out the back. So I'm taking my tweezer nose pliers again, and I'm just flattening that out, making sure nothing is sticking out. So now that we went ahead and weaved our pattern, this is the back, and you can see the 2 little tiny snips that we did on each side. So that's going to be the back. This is the front, and you can't see those. So that's how we know it's the front. It's nice and smooth. So now we're going to go ahead and take out our base wires, and I like to go ahead and start with the top. So I'm just going to hold the weave really, really tightly, making sure I have all pieces of the weave between my thumb and my index finger, and I'm just going to gently coax the wires out, just wiggling them and pulling them at the same time, not to distort my sun rays. So the next one is going to come out pretty easily, and then the next two come out fairly easily as well. The bottom one takes a little bit more, but it still shouldn't be too hard to take out. So I'm just going to grab the design again with my thumb and my index finger and just hold it firmly while I pull out the wire. And I'm just going to gently pull it out. So once you have the wire pulled out, you're going to have something that looks like this. And we have 5 of the longer rays and 6 of the shorter rays. And you have 1 wrap in between except for the sides, which will have 5 wraps on each. And right here, I'm just adjusting it to make it a little bit more straight. And you're going to want to make the second one just like this. So here I have the second one already made. And I'm going to go ahead and put that on our 16 gauge wire that we made the spirals with. So taking that 16 gauge wire that we made the spiral with, I'm going to go ahead and insert that at the very bottom. And I'm just going to shimmy it onto the wire very gently, and making sure that it doesn't come apart as you're wiggling it on. So you're just going to want to keep working the weave onto the earring and just keep pushing it onto the spiral, and you're going to make it curve around the spiral like I am doing here, and just keep wiggling and pushing that on until you get it into about the center of the spiral. So I'm just continue to adjust it, and I like the way that looks, so I'm going to continue to just make sure that it's exactly the way I want. I'm going to make the spiral just a little bit tighter and make the curve around the top just a little bit tighter as well. And that looks perfect. So we're going to go ahead and set that off to the side and do the other earring. So here is the back and here is the front. And you'll be able to tell, like we went over before, that the back has the little snips that you can see, the front does not. So you want to wiggle this one on as well. And once you have it in the spot, just like the other one, you're going to want to go ahead and compare them and take a look to see if they lie in the exact same spot. So just continue to adjust. That looks pretty good. So let's get our other earring and let's compare. So I'm just checking everything out to see how they look against each other. And it looks like I need to adjust the weave to be just a little bit higher. So I'm going to push that on just a little bit more. Keep working it. And then I'm going to compare them again. So it's just kind of taking your time, comparing them, seeing what needs to be fixed and what doesn't. And these look pretty good. So we're going to go ahead and start the next step. So we're going to make the spiral completely around the outside of the weave sun rays. So I'm going to hold it with my index and my left thumb, and I'm going to use my right hand and I'm going to start curving the wire around. You want to make sure in your left that you're holding your design very tightly, and you just want to use your right hand and just gently start bending that around like I'm doing here. Take your time, just listen to the wire and don't bend it too furiously too fast, because you could just do little increments at a time. Here I'm just adjusting it like you can see, and I'm going to continue with my right hand to just make the wire round. So you're just trying to make that spiral around the weaving sun rays, checking it out, seeing what you need to fix. And that looks pretty good. So we're going to do the same thing to the other side. So we're going to hold it with our thumb and our index finger. And using our right hand, we're going to use that wire and just curve it around the entire piece. So I'm just gently working it, gently bending it, and just adjusting it as I feel fit. So I want to make sure that's a little bit tighter, using my fingers just to push it a little bit, make it a little rounder. You want it kind of close to the weaving rays, but not super, super close, just like I have it here. So just keep adjusting, working it. And I really like the way this is turning out. So just maybe a little bit more adjusting, and then we're going to compare it with the other earring. So take your time, don't rush it. If you want it a little bit different looking, you can. And we're going to cut about 1/4 of an inch off of the tip right here. So make sure that you flush cut it so it's not sticking out. And then you're going to compare it with the other one, and you're going to cut in the exact same spot. That way they are equal. So I went ahead and cut that with the flush cutters that I don't care about, because again, we're using the 16 gauge wire. And here are our earrings. So now we're going to go ahead and make the spiral at the top. And you can see that I have the earrings in the exact same spot, like not mirrored, but you can do them exactly the same. That way you have the muscle memory, and then you just flip it around. So it's really nice and easy to do it like that. So here I'm just using my tweezer nose pliers, and I'm just starting that spiral, and I'm using my right hand, right wrist, just to continue that spiral and keep going around. I'm just going to adjust it a little bit with my tweezer nose pliers. Make sure it's laying flat, making sure that the loop is nice and tight, and adjusting it down a little bit. So I'm going to use my right hand with my finger and my thumb, and I'm going to grasp that spiral, and I'm just going to continue using that with my thumb and my finger. Now you can use the nylon pliers to go ahead and do that, but I find it's easier if I just use my fingers so I can get the exact shape that I want. And here I'm just using my tweezer nose just to flatten it down again, make sure that everything is looking the way I want, adjusting the top, making it a little bit more of a spiral. Careful with this part when you do your tweezer nose to just kind of compress it a little bit more, because you don't want to mar anything up. You can also use flat nose pliers as well. And just continue adjusting. I'm going to adjust the sun so that way that the middle ray is going to be in the center with the top of the spiral. So just adjusting that ray so that way when you look at it, the middle ray lines up with the top where you're going to have the earring hook into it. Keep adjusting, making the spiral a little tighter, making the round part on the outside just a little bit more round, a little bit tighter as well. And that is looking pretty good. So you'll have something that looks like this, and you can continue to adjust it as many times as you need, and we will end up hammering the outside so that way it does get some strength. So this is what it looks like, and we're going to want to do the exact same thing to the other earring. So again, we're going to take our tweezer nose pliers, and you can also use your bail making pliers if you don't have tweezer nose, and we're going to make a loop at the very top, just using the right wrist and the right hand to kind of go ahead and make that a nice loop around. Holding the design with my left finger and thumb, and taking the tweezer nose pliers and making that loop a little tighter. You just want to keep adjusting everything. Take your time with it. Be patient with the wire. Don't try to rush. And we're going to continue making that spiral up at the top, adjusting our tweezer nose pliers, and making that nice and round. So I'm taking my fingers and doing the same thing that I did with the other one. It's kind of getting a little bit off there, so I'm using my tweezer nose again just to kind of help it out just a little bit, making sure that it's staying nice and round and that it's not looking weird. So you just want to continue that spiral up at the top, just like we did the other one, adjusting the wire down. Now I'm taking a look at both of them, and right now they're not mirrored. I'm just making sure that they look pretty exact to each other, as exact as I can. Always compare when you're making earrings. Doesn't matter how many times you do it. And that is looking pretty good. So let's put them on top of each other, see what needs to be adjusted for them to be pretty exact to each other. So I can see that I need to adjust the outside frame just a little bit. So I'm going to bend it around just a little bit more and adjust it. And I also need to fix the sun rays in order for it to match up with the other one. So I'm comparing again, taking a look from the side so you can see that they are looking pretty exact. So once you compare them and they look pretty good, you can take a look to see which one is going to be which side is the front and which is the back, because on this one on the left, you can see the little snips, so that one will be on the left and the other one will be on the right, or vice versa, however you want to put them. But you can tell with the fronts because you will not be able to see the snips. And just adjusting the tops. And now we're going to go ahead and hammer the outside for strength. So I got my hammer out and I got my bench block out, and I'm just going to gently just start hammering around the outside frame. Just in little increments, going back and forth, giving this wire a nice strength that it needs. So just continuing to hammer all the way around. You do not want to hit your weaving rays at all, so just be very cautious, very gentle, take your time, there's no rush, and just continuing to go around. I go around a couple of times just to make sure I got everything and that the strength of the wire hardening is distributed equally. So that's why I keep going around and just taking the time. And I'm pretty happy with how that looks and how that turned out. So I'm going to do the same thing to the other side, starting at the top and just hammering that gently and working my way down and around. And again, just really make sure that you are taking your time because you really don't want to hit your weaving rays. You could actually distort them or crush the little weave that we have going on. So just gently going around over and over, just a couple of times. Every single time that we hit the wire with the hammer, it is strengthening it, and that's why I go around so many times, as I want to make sure that it is super evenly distributed and that we have a nice hard wire, that way our earrings do not distort. So that is pretty good, and I'm happy with it. So now that we've strengthened the outside of our earrings, let's go ahead and attach them together. We're going to need 2 pieces at 12 inches of 26 gauge round. So I'm just measuring here the 12 inches of my 26 gauge, snipping that with my flush cutters, and taking another piece of the 26 gauge and just measuring that really quickly against the other one, taking my cutters, snipping that again, and smoothing it out. So we're going to attach the top to the middle right there, that way the earrings do not come apart. So leaving about a 1-inch tail, I'm putting that behind the wire, and I'm going to wrap it around and over, holding the wire with my left finger and my thumb, and using my right to go ahead and weave around 5 times. So there I have 2 wraps, and I'm just weaving over that middle wire. There's 3 wraps, and I'm putting the weaving wire through the design. As you can see here, showing you from the side, it is going through the design, up and over and around. So there's 4 wraps, and adjusting it to make sure that they are all laying flat side by side next to each other and there's no gaps. So here I'm showing you a different way you can insert the wire and making sure that it goes through and doesn't get kinked. So continuing to hold the weaving wire with our left hand, we're going to go ahead and weave once more around for 5 loops around that middle wire. So I'm just inserting the weaving wire back through. And then now we're going to go over both of the wires. So we're going to attach the middle wire to the top wire. So pushing that over as far left as I can go, and then inserting the weaving wire back through the design and pushing it over again and going over one more time for 2 wraps. So holding that with my left fingers, I am adjusting and going to use my nylon pliers in order to just push it down just gently, making sure that those wires are nice and tight and flat together, inserting my weaving wire back through the design and pulling that out, pushing the weave back over. And then I'm going to take the weaving wire and wrap around that middle spiral that we initially wrapped around first, and we're going to wrap around 3 times. So here I'm inserting the weaving wire, and then there's 1 wrap, and I'm pushing that over with my thumbnail. We're going back through the design, pulling it out gently so it doesn't get kinked, inserting it back through, and that's 2 wraps. Taking the weaving wire, putting it back through the design, up and over and back through the design. And this makes 3 wraps around. So now that we have our 3 wraps, we're going to go over both of the wires again. So inserting the wire and going around and over both of the wires. Taking the weaving wire, going back through the design, and it got caught around the center, so I'm fixing it here. Backing up and over for 2 wraps around both of those wires, and then I'm taking the wire back through, and then now we're going to wrap around the middle wire again 3 times. So there's once, inserting it back through, making sure I get it in the right spot, pushing that over for 2 wraps, bringing the weaving wire back through the design and out for 3 wraps. And then now we're going to wrap around the 2 base wires again. So going in and through and over the top of both of the base wires, in and through the design and over the 2 base wires again. You will have a gap here in between your base wires, and that is exactly what we want. So you don't want to pull your weaving wire so tight that the base wires are touching. You want to have a gap between them to keep the initial design that we created. So the gap between them is what we want. And we're going to wrap around that middle spiral again to end our weave to match the other side, and we're going to do this 5 times around. So here I have 2 weaves, and I'm going up and over and through for 3 weaves, and through the design, and pushing it over and out. So there's 4, and in through the design, up and over, and back out of the design for 5 wraps around to match the initial start that we did on the earring. So now that we have our weave completed, you can see here that we have a tail on this side and a tail on the other side. This is the back, and we're just going to take our flush cutters and go ahead and snip that wire. And you want to snip it with a little tail, that way when you tuck it in and curve it around, it is seamless and it doesn't come undone. So here I'm just cutting the other side, and I'm going to take my tweezer nose pliers, and as you see here, I am curving it around with how we would continue the weave, and curving it around, that way the wire goes around the base wire and then it doesn't stick out and it doesn't come undone. I'm just checking the wire here to make sure there's nothing sticking out and pokey. So I'm just going to flatten it out with my nylon pliers, gently just pushing it, that way it's nice and flat. Checking it out, making sure it looks good. So now that we have this earring done, we're going to go ahead and do the exact same thing to the other side. So I'm going to flip the design around so I can weave in the exact same way that I just weaved the other earring. It makes it a lot easier, and we're going to go ahead and start off by taking our weaving wire and inserting it through the design. And I'm inserting it right here, and we're going to have that weaving wire to the back like we had it the first time, leaving a 1-inch tail, holding it with my left finger and thumb and bringing that around so I have 1 loop, or one weave around and bringing it back through the design. And then we're going to adjust it to make sure it's tight, holding the weaving wire and going around a second time, adjusting it again to make sure that it's nice and tight for our initial weaves, and taking the weaving wire, going back through the design, making sure it doesn't go over the top, going back through and up and over, pulling the weaving wire as we go gently in through the design, pulling it back out, going up and over again, and make sure you hold your weaving wire. I almost lost it there. And going back through the design, pulling it back out, and going up and over again. And now we have our 5 wraps. So now that we have all 5, I'm going to go ahead and just adjust them all together, making sure that the weave is nice and tight and pushing it a little bit closer to the top portion that we're going to secure to the middle. So we're going to do our 2 wraps around both of the base wires. So I'm sticking my wire through, going over both of the base wires, and I got it caught on the center there, so I just fixed that, pushing the wire back over, doing the second weave around both of the base wires. And then I'm going to straighten out my weaving wire, go back through the design, gently pull out my weaving wire, adjust again, and now we're going to weave the 3 wraps on the middle wire with the sun. So I'm just showing you here where we're going to wrap, and I'm going to stick my wire back in through the design, making sure not to kink the wire, and I'm going to try and push it as close to the 2 weaves that we just did as possible. So that's what I'm doing here with my thumbnails. Now you can do it with some tweezer nose pliers, but you want to be very gentle and make sure that you don't mar your wire because this is a thin wire and it could break. So I'm just pulling the wire back through the design and straightening out my weaving wire, going back out of the design, pushing my weaving wire up as close to the other weave as possible, going back in, pulling my wire out, going back in through the design, and pulling my wire out again, up and over, and this makes 3 wraps. So I'm going to push that as close to the other 2 wraps as possible. And now we're going to straighten our weaving wire and do the next 2 wraps around the 2 base wires. So up and over, both base wires, and again you will have a gap there and you do want that. You don't want to distort what we just made. So just be very gentle when you're wrapping around both of them. And I'm sticking my weaving wire back in, pulling that back through and making sure not to overlap the wire. And just adjusting the wire there. So now we have our 2 wraps around both of the base wires. Now I'm sticking my wire back through, and we're going to wrap around the middle base wire again with the sun rays. So we're going to do 3 wraps around the middle sun ray, sticking my wire out, pulling the weaving wire just to straighten it with my fingers, fishing the wire back through the design, and out so it goes up and over, straightening my weaving wire, putting the weaving wire back through, up and over, and this will be our 3rd wrap on that middle wire. So just straightening that out, putting the wire back through, and then we're going to go up and over 2 times again over both of the wires. So again, you will have a gap here and you don't want to pull it too tight where it's going to try to distort your design. The gap is perfectly fine and that's exactly what we want. So you can see that here, that's what it should look like. Now I'm just going up and over both of the wires again, fishing my wire through the design, pushing the wires as close together as possible, And then we're going to weave the 5 times around the wire with the spiral to match the other side. So taking my wire back out and over, back through the design, up and over and out for 2 weaves, back in through the design, back out for 3 weaves, back in through the design, up and over and out for 4 weaves, back in through the design, back out of the design, up and over, and back through for the final touch. So now we have our 5 weaves, and I'm pushing it close together with my thumbs just to make sure everything is nice and tight. Now we're going to go ahead and cut our weaving wire. So we want to cut it just like we did the other earrings so that the wire falls kind of right in the center of the wire. Once we go ahead and cut it, so I'm going to snip it right there. And you'll have a little tail, and then we're going to get our tweezer nose pliers, and we're just going to follow that curve like if we were going to wrap around again, and just make sure that it's nice and curved and tight, that way it doesn't come undone. Now you want to be gentle when you're using your tweezer nose pliers doing that, because you don't want to break your wire. So I'm just taking my flush cutters again, and I'm going to snip the other side, leaving a little tail like we did before. So just taking my tweezer nose pliers and acting like if I'm going to weave that weave around again and going in that direction. That way it is nice and smooth against the wire and it doesn't stick out. Here I'm taking my nylon pliers and just flattening it out a little bit. So it looks like the top weave got a little out of place. Might have not pulled it tight enough, so I'm just adjusting and fixing that very, very gently with my tweezer nose pliers and getting it back to look nice. So once we have both of the weaves done on the earrings, this is what they should look like. And we will be moving on to the next step, which is making the rays wavy. So we're going to go ahead and make the rays wavy. This is an optional step. If you like the way that they look straight, then leave them straight. But if you want to make them wavy, I will show you how to do that here. So I'm going to take my left hand with my finger and my thumb and hold the design very firmly. And then with my right, I'm going to use my wrist and my tweezer nose pliers. And I'm going to go back and go up a little bit and then forth. And it'll make a little wave. So on the bigger ones, I'm going to do it 3 times. So back, and then I'm going to go up a little bit and forth, and then back. And then I'm going to fix the center again so it's nice and straight. So on the little ones, back, and then forth, really using my wrist. The longer ones, back, and then forth, and then up a little bit and then back. So you want to go up just a tiny little bit every single time you do a new little twist in the wire or a new little bend in the wire. So back and forth, back, going up a little bit and then forth, and then going the opposite way and then fixing the center. So the little ray, back, and then forth, and back, and forth, and back. And then fixing the center again. Now you'll see when I get down to the bottom, I kind of wiggle it a little bit so I can get my tweezer nose pliers as close to the base as I possibly can. And here back, up a little bit, forth, and then back, and then fixing the center. And then finishing this one off, back, and then forth. And this is what it should look like. So there you've made your rays nice and wavy. So we're going to go ahead and do the same thing to the other side, starting with the littlest, and we're going to hold it firmly back and forth, going to the larger one, back and up a little bit, forth, up a little bit, and back. And as you can see, it can be a little bit tricky. I lost my grip and kind of lost control of my pliers, so just be careful. So back and forth, and then back, up a little bit, forth, up a little bit, and back. So you'll just want to continue that pattern as you go along the different rays. So I'm just continuing, going up a little bit in increments, fixing the center. Doing the little ones, I only do 2, and then doing the larger ones, I like to do 3. You can play around to see what you like. There's no set in stone that you have to do something. And again, I lost control of my pliers, so it just happens if you're not careful. Just showing you the real raw what can happen, so I left it in here. So back and forth and back, fixing the center. And the littler ones can be tricky, so just be patient, and this is what it should look like. So now that we have both of them done, you can adjust, see if your sun looks the way you want it to be. The center ray should be in the center where the earring is going to hang, the earring hook. And that's what it looks like, and this is what both of them look like. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in part 2.